Okay, imagine this. You're at the airport, maybe early morning, typical checkpoint scene. A TSA officer grabs a suitcase, a heavy one, maybe 50 pounds, hoists it onto the belt, and suddenly, boom, sharp pain right in their lower back. Or maybe down another lane, a screener slips, wet floor, crashes down, twists a knee, and then there are those more dramatic things you hear about, like that passenger in Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely. And our goal here, for you, our listener, is really to unpack that physical toll. We want to dissect the details of the Office of Workers' Compensation Programs claims, OWCP for short, and maybe highlight some essential resources, things that can genuinely simplify that path, the path to recovery, getting benefits approved. It's about giving you the insights you need because it's a critical process, but yeah, it can feel daunting.
Okay, let's unpack that phrase, physically demanding. We might just see officers standing, checking IDs, but it's way more than that, isn't it? What do the actual numbers tell us about injury rates for TSA folks?
You hit it right there. It's far more physical than most people think. Get this. In 2017 alone, TSA reported 1,813 work-related injuries or illnesses. And just to give that some context, that figure was one of the highest totals among all federal agencies.
1,813 in 1 year. That's a lot. So what kinds of injuries are we talking about most often? What specific tasks are causing them?
Well, the vast majority are musculoskeletal issues. So think muscles, bones, joints. Overexertion and lifting, that's a huge one. It counts for about 20% of TSA injuries right there. Constantly hoisting heavy bags. It leads to back strains, shoulder injuries, things like that. And yeah, they installed those mechanical baggage systems to help, but lifting injuries, still really frequent. Then you've got slips, trips, and falls. Those, combined with overexertion, they're actually the top causes. Together, they make up nearly half of all cases, leading to sprained ankles, busted knees, sometimes even fractures. Busy airports, maybe slick floors. It happens. And we absolutely can't forget repetitive strain. This is the stuff that builds up slowly, gradually, over months, even years of doing the same motions again and again, moving bins, pat downs, just standing for hours. OWCP calls this an occupational illness. It can cause chronic joint pain, tendonitis, carpal tunnel, usually wrists, shoulders, knees, feet. Now, I've spoken to officers who, well, they initially just ignored that nagging ache, thought, it's just part of the job, but those little strains, they often snowball into major problems if you don't deal with them. And about 15% of injuries involve being struck by objects, especially hands and fingers. Could be a heavy suitcase falling off the conveyor onto someone's foot, or getting a finger pinched in an x-ray machine causes bruises, broken bones, cuts, and finally there's workplace violence. It's unfortunate, but it happens. TSA officers sometimes face assault, an unruly traveler throwing a punch, or, those rare, really awful events like the LAX checkpoint shooting back in 2013. Any injury from a single violent event like that, that's categorized as traumatic for OWCP. Needs a specific form, the CA1.
That's a really sobering breakdown. And it leads to the statistic that it stopped me in my tracks. At one point, 16% of TSA screeners reported injuries in a single year. Compare that to the average for federal workers, which is around 4.5%. It's huge. It really drives home how real that daily strain is. Backs, knees, shoulders, feet, from all that lifting, all that standing.
Exactly. And stepping back a bit, what all this underlines is just how crucial the Office of Workers' Compensation Programs, the OWCP, is. It's truly the lifeline for federal employees when they get hurt doing their jobs.
A lifeline for sure. And the scale is just massive when you think about how many federal workers file claims each year, especially with TSA's high rates. Can you give us a sense of that volume?
Oh yeah, it's significant. Federal workers file tens of thousands of these OWCP claims annually. Take fiscal year 2020, for example. Over 90,000 federal injury claims were filed. And that resulted in nearly $3 billion in benefits paid out. So yeah, given their injury numbers, TSA's slice of that pie is pretty substantial.
And looking at the claims themselves, what kinds of injuries dominate those filings?
Orthopedic issues, definitely. Hands down, the majority. Back injuries consistently ranked number one. About 20% of TSA injuries, followed pretty closely by hand and finger injuries, around 15%. But yeah, sprains, strains, injuries to knees, ankles, shoulders, lower back. Mostly from slips, trips, falls, that constant lifting. That's the bulk of TSA's OWCP cases.
Okay, so here's something that seems like a bit of a paradox. Officially, the stats say over 89% of all federal workers' comp claims get accepted on the first try. And for traumatic injuries, it's even higher, like 93%. That sounds great, right? But is that the whole picture? Is there a catch for you, our listener?
That's a really important question. Because, yes, there's a crucial distinction there. Those high official numbers, they only count claims that were actually filed with enough documentation. The reality, many injured federal employees never get their claim approved. Why? because of mistakes made right at the start or maybe not getting the right support. For instance, one analysis showed that in a particular year, only about 6.7% of USPS employees and just 2.2% of VA employees actually had an accepted OWCP injury claim. So the key thing for you to understand is getting approved isn't automatic, not at all. It really hinges on doing things correctly from day one.
Wow. Okay. That's a massive difference between the official rate and the accepted claim rate in practice. And that must be incredibly frustrating for injured workers. What about the timing? How long does this process actually take? The regulations have targets, but what's the real world wait time like?
Well, the regs aim for 45 days for a decision on a traumatic injury claim, 90 days for a simple occupational disease, maybe 180 days for more complex stuff. But the reality, many claims take longer, sometimes much longer. A Government Accountability Office study, the GAO, found average processing times were more like 3 to 4 months for those one-time injuries. And get this, 8 to 9 months for occupational illness claims. And that's if it goes smoothly. If a claim gets denied and you have to appeal, that adds several more months. You could be looking at nearly a year in some cases. So, yeah, federal workers' comp, it's usually not fast.
Not fast, and getting it right is critical. So what's the biggest reason claims get shot down? The number one denial reason?
It almost always comes down to a lack of proper documentation. That's the big one. See, OWCP needs a clear medical narrative, something that explicitly links the injury to your work duties. If the doctor's report is vague, or if it doesn't have what OWCP considers sufficient medical evidence, well, that claim is very likely getting rejected. You know, the real battle in an OWCP claim often isn't fought in a hearing room. It's won or lost on paper. Every piece of evidence you gather right from the start, that transforms your pain from just an anecdote into undeniable proof for your claim. And there are other common roadblocks too. Simple paperwork mistakes, like using the wrong form or missing a deadline. And unfortunately, sometimes there's agency pushback. We hear from some TSA folks, other federal employees, who say supervisors discourage them from filing, or maybe try to slow down the paperwork. So it's really no wonder that some people just give up, or they end up using their own sick leave instead of fighting for the claim they deserve. You need to understand, while your health is key, your agency's priorities might not always perfectly align with getting your claim pushed through quickly. Being proactive, advocating for yourself, it's not just a right, it's almost a necessity here.
That sounds like a tough climb. So looking at the big picture, what are the overall trends we're seeing with these orthopedic injuries and the OWCP system?
Well, the trends are clear. Orthopedic injuries are super common, and they're expensive. TSA's workers' comp costs run into the tens of millions of dollars every year. And while, yes, the majority of properly filed claims do get accepted eventually, that properly filed part is key. Denial rates are pretty high when things aren't done right from the start, especially for those repetitive stress injuries or psychological claims, which need even more proof. And like we said, claims take time, which makes it absolutely critical to get it right the first time. Avoid those extra delays, that extra frustration.
Okay, so if getting it right is so crucial and the process itself can feel overwhelming, where can federal employees like our TSA officers find real help, specialized help? Which brings us to a specific resource that seems to be making a real difference. Restore Muscle and Joint Clinics. They're in Kansas City and now St. Louis too.
Right. Restore is, well, they're an integrated clinic. You've got chiropractors, physical therapists, medical doctors, even an orthopedic surgeon on staff, all under one roof. So for an injured TSA officer, that means basically one stop for complete care. It simplifies things immensely. They really focus on non-surgical treatments first whenever possible, things like rehab, decompression therapy, soft wave tissue therapy. But if surgery turns out to be absolutely necessary, they can handle that referral smoothly too. And their expertise, it lines up perfectly with the kind of injuries TSA personnel commonly face. Restore's main focus areas are disc and low back injuries, knee pain, neuropathy issues, that's nerve stuff, tingling, numbness, exactly the back strains, the joint problems we see in airport security work. They've been in Kansas City for over 10 years, built a strong reputation for, as they put it, eliminating pain from your life and getting people moving again.
So they definitely have the medical side covered. But you mentioned something else that sets them apart. Beyond just the treatment, it's their understanding, their mastery of the federal workers' comp process itself. Like, they're not just doctors, they're OWCP guides.
Precisely. That administrative expertise, it's a total game changer for federal employees. Restore's clinics actually have DOL-credentialed physicians. That means certified by the Department of Labor and their staff. They know the FECA system, the Federal Employees Compensation Act, inside and out. They even set up a dedicated federal injury center in Kansas City just to serve federal workers like TSA, Postal Service, VA employees full-time. They actively help patients file the correct forms. They keep CA1, CA2, CA17s right there on hand, make sure everything's filled out properly. And here's the really crucial part. Their doctors know exactly how to write those medical reports. They include the critical causation language that OWCP absolutely demands. Stuff like, in my medical opinion, this injury is a direct result of this specific work activity on this date. Getting that paperwork right up front dramatically boosts the odds of the claim being accepted. It avoids that common trap of vague doctor's note leading straight to denial. And billing. Restore bills OWCP directly. The injured employee pays nothing out of pocket. They'll even work to get a CA16 authorization form when it's appropriate, which guarantees the Department of Labor covers that initial care. It just lets the patient focus entirely on healing, not stressing about bills.
Okay, so they handle the treatment and the paperwork headache. It sounds like they really stick with you through the whole process. Tell me more about this claim management and advocacy part. How does that actually lighten the load for the employee?
It really is what you might call a cradle-to-grave approach for the claim. Their team tracks the claim status. They help respond if OWCP asks for more information. They'll communicate directly with the claims examiner if needed. Let's say a claim gets denied initially. They help strengthen the case for reconsideration, provide more medical backup, or, if needed, refer the employee to trusted OWCP attorneys for an appeal. They know the common snags, like maybe a supervisor dragging their feet submitting forms. They can advise on what to do next. Basically, they act as your advocate, your case manager. Takes a huge weight off the injured worker's shoulders. Like Restore says, being hurt, being off work, that's stressful enough. Worrying about claim forms shouldn't pile on top of it.
That is an incredible level of support. Let's make it really concrete for you, our listener. Say there's a TSA officer at MCI, Kansas City International Airport, strains his back lifting a heavy suitcase. What does the process look like if they go to Restore Muscle and Joint? Walk us through it.
Okay, so that officer reports the injury, right? Then heads over to Restore. First, the clinic evaluates him, diagnoses the injury. Let's say it's a lumbar muscle strain, common stuff. They immediately start a treatment plan tailored for him. Maybe chiropractic adjustments, some physical therapy, maybe that soft wave therapy we mentioned. But at the same time, Restore's admin staff is right there helping him file the CA1 form for a traumatic injury. They make sure the form clearly notes the specific incident. And, crucially, that the doctor's report nails the work-related cause. Then, they issue a CA17 duty status report for his supervisor. Lets the agency know his work capacity. All of this happens quickly, within days. So he qualifies for COP continuation of pay. That's up to 45 days of his salary while he's out recovering. Restore bills OWCP directly for all the treatment. And because they were proactive, got the documentation perfect from the start, the claim gets accepted smoothly, no delays. The officer recovers, focuses on getting better, not fighting paperwork battles.
That's a powerful example. So it's not just a hypothetical story. They've actually seen this work out for people many times.
Oh, absolutely. Restore has countless success stories like that, whether it's a shoulder injury from a slip and fall, or maybe chronic knee pain that built up over years on the job. Their whole goal is to heal the injury and handle all that bureaucratic red tape. It truly takes the burden off the employee. This approach means you, the injured worker, don't suddenly have to become an expert on OWCP regulations overnight just to get the care you need.
And just to reiterate, they have this specific focus on federal workers right there in Kansas City, and now St. Louis, too. They expanded there in late 2024, making it easier for folks in that area to get access. Plus, things like flexible hours, quick appointments, understanding shift work, and really educating patients on their rights. Like, hey, you can choose your own doctor. You don't have to go to the agency's doctor. And hammering home those important deadlines.
Exactly. If you boil it down, Restore's unique value is like a 1-2 punch. You get the healing you need, plus the hand-holding through that complex OWCP journey. For an injured TSA employee, or really any federal worker facing this, that kind of comprehensive support, it could be a complete game changer.
Okay, fantastic. Now let's shift gears slightly and give you, our listeners, some really practical, actionable tips. Essential OWCP compliance advice for TSA officers and really any federal employee listening. These are the takeaways you can use immediately if you find yourself in this situation.
All right, first things first. Report injuries immediately. Don't try to tough it out. Seriously. As soon as you get hurt, or even if you just realize a work task caused a condition, tell your supervisor within 24 hours if you possibly can. Reporting early creates that official record, and it's absolutely key for getting certain benefits later on. Next up, use the right form. This is a big one. CA1 versus CA2. Was it a sudden accident? A one-time event like that slip or that lifting injury? That's a form CA1 for a traumatic injury. Or is it something chronic, developed over weeks, months, maybe years, like repetitive stress? Like a form CA2. for an occupational disease. Filing the correct form right at the start is critical for getting the claim accepted. Tip number 3, hit those key deadlines, especially the 30-day rule. For a CA1 traumatic injury, you need to file that form within 30 days of the incident. Why? To protect your right to continuation of pay cop. Remember, that's up to 45 days of your regular salary while you're out recovering. Big deal. There's also a general 3-year time limit, a statute of limitations for filing most claims. So bottom line, don't wait. And this is important. Ask for a CA16 form for treatment. If you have a traumatic injury, a CA1 situation, your agency can issue a Form CA16. This form authorizes medical treatment and crucially guarantees payment for that initial care. By regulation, your employer should give you a CA16 within 4 hours of being notified about a legit traumatic injury. So don't be afraid to ask for it. Okay, choosing your doctor. This is your right. Choose an OWCP-savvy doctor. You get to choose your treating physician. The agency cannot force you to only see their doctor. It's really smart to find a provider who has experience with federal workers' comp, someone who, speaks OWCP, who knows exactly how to document your injury correctly for the system. Honestly, many regular doctors just aren't familiar with all the specific OWCP requirements. This next one might be the most important. Document everything. Everything. The second you're injured, start that paper trail. Note the exact time, the place, precisely how it happened. If coworkers saw it happen, get witness statements if you can. If it's safe, take photos of whatever caused the injury, like the wet floor or the hazard, and keep copies. Copies of every single form you submit, every letter you get, all correspondence. That paper trail. It can absolutely save your claim down the road. Also, know your rights, and don't let anyone deter you from filing. Federal law protects your right to file a workers' comp claim, period. Your employer must process your claim form and send it to OWCP. They cannot retaliate against you. They cannot prevent you from filing. If a supervisor tries to discourage you or maybe stalls on the paperwork, remember, it is illegal for them to interfere with your claim. If that happens, you can involve your agency's injury compensation office or talk to your union rep. Speaking of evidence, provide strong medical evidence. This is vital. OWCP claims really live or die based on the quality of the medical documentation. Work closely with your doctor. Make sure the report clearly states your diagnosis, the treatment plan, and this is critical, a clear causal link to your work duties. It needs to explicitly say something like, in my medical opinion, the patient's injury or condition was directly caused by mention the specific work task or incident. That explicit connection is what OWCP looks for. And after you file, don't just sit back. Follow up and stay engaged. You'll get a claim number, and an OWCP claims examiner will be assigned to your case. Keep an eye on your claim status. You can usually check online through OWCP's eComp portal, that's their electronic system. If you haven't heard anything for a few weeks, follow up. Call or send a message. And keep going to all your medical appointments and any exams OWCP might direct you to attend. Stay involved. And finally, leverage the resources available to you. You are not alone in this. Use your union. If you're in one, like AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees, they often have specialists who know OWCP inside and out. For really complex cases, or if you need to appeal a denial, consider talking to an OWCP attorney or a qualified representative. And of course, seek out healthcare providers who specialize in this. Clinics like Restore Muscle and Joint, or other federal injury centers that offer both the medical treatment and the critical claims assistance.
Okay, let's wrap up this deep dive. It's clear that TSA officers, well, they truly put their bodies on the line every day to keep travelers safe. All that lifting, bending, standing, and sometimes facing real danger. The orthopedic toll is incredibly real. But as we've really explored today, help is absolutely available.
Yeah, the key insight, I think, is that knowing these common injury risks and really understanding the basics of the OWCP rules, it empowers you. It empowers the employee to act fast and act correctly when an injury happens. The data clearly shows how common these injuries are. But crucially, it also suggests that with the right documentation, the right support, most claims can be successful. In places like Restore Muscle and Joint, they provide such an invaluable service. Healing the physical injury, yes, but also guiding people through what can otherwise feel like a real bureaucratic maze.
So the big takeaway here for you, our listener, if you're a federal worker and you get injured on the job, the system is there to help. It can work for you, but it probably won't work automatically. You need to be proactive. Your own steps, knowing where to find that specialized support, those are your best allies. So please don't suffer in silence. Remember, when in doubt, report that injury. Get the help you need. The law is on your side, and there are experts out there ready to assist. Thank you so much for joining us for this